What's good with the YouTube? You already know, Big Flocka with a convict's perspective. And I'm going to smash, dash, and slide on through with a little bit of energy, man. Before we start this off, man, please hit the like, subscribe, man, post some comments, help the algorithm, man. Let's push this channel, man. Let's keep it moving, man. And as you can tell by the title, man, we're going to be discussing a known hit and murder of Mexican Mafia by the Nuestra Familia that happened back in 1972 in Soledad. Now, there's been a lot of question marks about who did what hit, and whether these are valid hits and whatnot. I'm going to provide you enough information for you to make your own opinion and judgment on this, okay? That's came from different sources, and it's up to you to take it at face value what you feel. You know what I'm saying? But let's go back, man. As we discussed today, I was talking about September 16th, 1968, right? And during this time era, right, you had a lot of stuff that was going on. You had the all-out blitz in San Quentin. Now, that led to a lot of skirmishes the next year. And finally, there was kind of what you would call a cease and fire. You know what I'm saying? Like, everything started to it was no longer picking up momentum. A lot of these dudes were locked down. They were separated and so forth, man. And I say that there was a time of peace a little bit. You know what I mean? You had individuals that were just raza, and they would align with either, you know, the NF or MA on these yards. They would all be on the yards walking together. There was no guerra. There was no war. You know, Soledad was one of those facilities. And, you know, some of the main more shot callers were slammed down within the MA at that time. But there was a few that were let out. You know what I'm saying? One of them being an individual named Big Mike. And everybody knows that Big Mike, when he came out of AC, I think, if I'm not mistaken, he was vouched for by Crackers Mendoza and from Redondo Beach, and Louis Araujo, who was from Maravilla, who knew Big Mike, was a previous MA member, but then started to align himself with the NF and was one of the first ones to write the NF Constitution. You know, the talk was that there was going to be peace, there was going to be no issues, and, you know, both these individuals knew him or knew of him, you know what I'm saying? And eventually, you know, Big Mike was let out. And this is during a time era when basically, you know, one of the only eras in which the MA was kind of secretly recruiting at that time, you know what I'm saying? And they started to recruit a lot of members. And so on these yards, like I said, man, you'd have, you know, some MA members, MA associates, NF members, NF associates that would basically associate at times, man. You know, there was even a riot that occurred in Soledad where the NF and MA members actually aligned against the whites regarding an individual from Compton who later became an NF member that was disrespected. So as everything started to develop, man, once you start to have these yards, right, that have, you know, a lot of different rackets, you're going to start seeing a little bit more conflicts that occur. You know what I'm saying? You had the issues that happened with Death Row Joe and Woodsy. I think that was in 1972 in San Quentin. There was issues over a punk, which Mundo has alluded to, you know, and different individuals were involved in that, man. You know, Joker from Redonda, he did a lot of hits too at that time. Joker was one of the most ferocious individuals. So what ended up occurring was this, man. San Quentin was really one of the first facilities that started having a lot of skirmishes, you know what I'm saying, between NF and MA or associates and whatnot. And a lot of individuals were sent, I believe, from San Quentin, right, all the way back to Soledad. And during that time era, you had an individual named Lugo. You know what I'm saying? Lugo came through with another individual named Bozo from, I believe, from Sanjo. And they were bringing word that there were skirmishes between the AB and, you know, the Mexican Mafia amongst the NF and their associates. Okay, so immediately after he touched down, they killed Lugo, an AB member that went by the name of, I believe it was Woodsy as well, right? There's also another name that he went by as well. Now, this had occurred in September of 1972, but where it all kind of started, man, was back in November of 1971. And I think this was per Mundo Mendoza was one of the ones that maybe had a lot of influence when Daniel Woodsy, like I said, and Death Row Joe, they were attacked in San Quentin, man. I think the MA members they got into it with were Chavo Perez, we all know who Chavo is, and then Chita Padilla. And both these individuals were hit, you know what I'm saying? And as we all know, this was during a time period when Cadena was trying to bring peace at that time out there, you know what I mean, in the system. You know, there was another incident, you know, July 11th, 1972, where Juan Valdez was stabbed by an MA member named Beaver and Ronnie Salazar, right? Now, Beaver was basically a major hitman for the MA at that time, and it's believed that possibly Joe Morgan may have been the one that issued the hit on Valdez. which, at that time, like I said, some of these older MA members, especially Joe Morgan, looked at the NF as inferior. Now, a few months later, you had Charlie Castillo's death, right? Who he was killed by, which I think was in July 17, 1972, okay? Now, in response to that, an individual named Jesse Bozo Castro of Orange County was also killed by the AB on behalf of the MA. So you started to have a lot of hits that were occurring within the MA and MA AB factions. They were kind of working together. And that's around that time when Robert Zapata was hit in retaliation for these hits by Daniel Loza in Chino State Prison. And basically they say it happened in the shower area and so forth, man. And there's some allegations that maybe Bobby Zapata was trying to press up on this individual and that they used him to get close to this dude in order to hit him. And this is how Daniel Loza, chicken legs or pollo, made his bones, okay? Then there was another hit in August of 1972 where one of the original founders, Bruce Weddle Morgan, was hit by AB Steve Haley, right? And was stabbed. All this stuff started to, like I said, it started to cause a lot of conflict, man. And the NF started to draw a really deeper alliance with the black family at that time, the Black Guerrilla family. Now, when James Lugo was hit, this happened, I believe, in September of 1972. This was done mainly by the AB, okay? Now, from here, word traveled really fast. And see, it is believed that the AB decided to make that move before Lugo could pass word, okay? So when Lugo was hit, man, instantly Charlie from Banning, right, passed word to an individual named Little Danny from Salinas, Bruiser, and Fig. Little Danny, what they had with him, right, he was supposed to move on along with Flappers from Stockton. He was supposed to move on this MA member named Mike Buff and his brother, okay? So this is at the time, okay, Fig at this time was pretty much just starting to associate with the NF, okay? Now I'm going to be revealing something right now that's going to be a shocker to many of you guys, okay? At this time in Fig's career, he had considered joining the Mexican Mafia. Like I said, the NF and MA used to coexist on these yards at times, the associates and whatnot. And the reason being that he almost joined the Mexican Mafia was of his past kind of relationship with Tomas Flaco Oropeza from Artesia, right? Now, according to Fig, weeks before, okay, Flaco had got at him, right? And revealed that Flaco said that he was a Mexican Mafia member, that he had just recently been pulled. And that they were trying to secretly recruit members at this time because there was a war brewing, okay? Now, what he had told, like I said, they knew each other from YA and stuff, All these guys kind of knew each other. And he told Fig that at that time you could walk from yards to yards and communicate and sometimes go. It was more of you had more room to freelance, you know what I'm saying? And on the other yard, you had the individual Joey Boy from the Avenues and then Artie, and I think a couple other MA members as well. And Flaco had confided to Fig that they could go over the yard one of these weekends and he could meet Joey Boy and he could make a decision whether he wants to join the Mexican Mafia at that time. And Fig, he was a gangster, so he really considered joining the MA. So, I mean, there's a lot of people who, when they talk about Flaco, like I said, they call him an MA associate. According to Fig, Fig, straight up, he said that Flaco revealed to himself that he was an MA member and that they were trying to recruit Fig into the Mexican Mafia as well. Okay, so now with this situation that happened after Lugo got hit, like I said, Little Danny from Salas was supposed to move on this individual named Mike Buff, who was an MA member, and his brother from Compton. People know who I'm talking about. So since Little Danny kind of peed on himself, they dug up the pieces and he kind of fucking pussied out. So what ended up happening, right, is that Fig and Flappers from Stockton said, Fig obligated himself to fucking go handle business. Fig and Flappers from Stockton went off after Mike Buff from Compton and his brother. And according to Fig, Mike Buff took off fucking running and his brother straight to the fucking center complex because they were coming down with some bone crushers, right? So this individual retreated. Okay, now Fig wasn't an NF at that time. He was a strong associate, but he knew some of these individuals and he was going to rock with them because these were his boys. Now, the interesting thing about Little Danny, who peed on himself, was Little Danny's brother was Alejandro Moreno, Knuckles, right? Who, according to several NF members and according to the Monterey County District Attorney, when the NF killed him, they killed him based upon the fact that he was a Mexican Mafia member. Now, other MA members claim that he was an associate. I'm not going to sit there and argue and go for tick for tat because, I don't have, any other information than what was put out in court records and what other NF members say. Other MA members deny that he was an MA member, but they also deny Flaco, which Fig has said that Flaco straight told him he was a Mexican Mafia member. Okay, so what ended up happening from there is with Tomas Flaco Oropeza from Artesia, the individuals that ended up getting him were Bozo, I believe, and who was the other individual, man? Bozo and I think it was Bruiser and Diamond are the ones that ended up getting fucking Flaco from Artesia. You know what I'm saying? And they ended up taking his life. And see, this happened about 30 to 40 minutes after Lugo just got killed. So this was a response into the killing of Lugo. And see, like I said, I just described a couple of those incidents before about, what happened with Lips got hit, Death Row Joe and Woodsy got hit. A couple individuals got killed. And then there was other people that got killed in the system. Bullwinkle got killed in Tehachapi. I believe Diamond got killed later on in Susanville by Pelon and them. And so this was going on. They were going tick for tack a little bit. The MA was having a little bit more favorable stance. But that, I think, based upon the fact that the NF was a little bit less prepared, they weren't expecting it. The situation with Lugo, they were able to respond fast. But he said prior to that, it wouldn't be uncommon for them to be gatos in the room. I guess they killed another NF member in a cell under the guise of that they were going to go shoot dope, and then they ended up killing him. Then there was the other incident that happened in the movie room where some MA members got hit or associates. So there were some things that were going on at that time, that led up to the Cheyenne hit. And see, all these incidences are really key to the history because if the first incident would have never happened with Woodsy and Death Row Joe with Chavo and Cheetah, which some say Mundo had a big influence on it, then there probably wouldn't have been no guerra. There probably wouldn't have been no war. But then again, I think eventually this shit was going to fucking happen one way or another, man, because there was too many people that felt a certain way. And for, the truth of Mundo's, padrinos that brought him in the system, they were strongly, brought him into their organization. They were strongly against the NF, resisting the MA's fucking control. Those are facts, man. You know what I'm saying? And it just all has to do with who you aligned with. And I felt it kind of interesting that fucking when I heard this story from Fig, when he's telling me that he almost joined the Mexican Mafia. Now, he said after this incident right here, when they killed Flaco, is when he decided to rock with the NF 100%. He later on gets recruited maybe about 3 months later when he gets transferred to DVI. And that's when Fig and Hobo actually killed the first ever Aryan Brotherhood member. You know what I'm saying? They had Chino from Stockton who had the pieces in there because they were trying to get this dude for a minute. I believe his name was, I believe it was Snake or something like that. They ended up killing him though. You know what I'm saying? And see, when you look at what was going on, these incidents were happening. I think at that time there was probably like 1, 2, 3, maybe a possible 4 NF members that were killed. But most of them that were being killed were actually being killed by the fucking AB. You know what I'm saying? With the exception of, I think, Bullwinkle, maybe. I'm not sure if Bullwinkle was killed by the AB or not. But I know that Diamond was actually killed by the MA. You know what I'm saying? And so this is why also Fig took a stance of why he ended up joining the NF is because if this is a raza feud amongst each other, why are the white boys putting in work for other Mexicans? It did not sit well with him. You know what I'm saying? Just like, when there was issues between the NF and MA, the NF were not going to ask the AB to do their work if they were on the yard and they were able to do it. They were going to go handle their own shit. And see, this is why, the AB's, relationship was very strong. They were basically being requested to affirm their relationship, their ties. And like I said, there's about 2 or 3 murders that happened that the AB were directly involved as the sole, culprit, or they assisted the MA in it. You know what I'm saying? And there's a lot of reasons that this may have happened. I know one of it was to seal a pact between these groups. But I also think it was more along the lines that at that time, the MA was very powerful, very ferocious. The AB had some fucking hitters, straight killers, ferocious motherfuckers, right? But their numbers in general were pretty much, small compared to these other groups. So with them aligning with one of the most powerful groups in the prison system, they're going to be that much more stronger. You know what I'm saying? And that's how all this transpired. Like I said, it was all basically in the works of going to happen eventually. All of it stems from San Quentin, the conflicts over there. There was punks, there was fucking people being taxed. The TS started getting to their incidents with the MA as well. And this led to, like I said, man, to this conflict, to the war. And at that time, this is when Cheyenne had a change of not, I'm not gonna say change of heart, but he had enough sense to sit there and say, you know what, if I'm gonna be about the raza, we could do so much more together, because now you got a group that maybe, hey, they're not as strong as us yet. They're youngsters. They're still learning to find their way. But these guys ain't gonna go nowhere. And that's what it came down to. If the MA had a possibility to extinct the NF, they were gonna do it. You know what I'm saying? But they weren't not able to. The NF came back twice as hard. And that's why the murder of Cheyenne was pretty much one of the defining moments for the NF. Now, the morale was starting to get down around that time because there was a lot of brothers that were getting hit, and their whole chain of command was a little bit different. There was no, really strong constitution, no guidelines and whatnot. And every NF member that was designated an authority at that time of a facility could operate it as he sees fit. You know what I'm saying? There was no guidelines or structure or regimental things. And this is what led to the changes in the drafting of an NF constitution that started to be pushed a whole different agenda, where the militancy came about, the chain of command came about. And I think one of the ones that was a culprit in this was an individual. I want to say fucking, I don't think it was Peanut from Stockton. I think Peanut came in later and just reestablished everything. But some of these facilities, changed, the whole direction of which way they needed to go. Because before they would be on certain yards and there'd be NF members getting hit and there would be no retaliation. And there would be the excuse, well, we're waiting for our numbers. And a lot of carnales were like, nah, fuck that. You know what I'm saying? I know that happened to Bo. When Bo was in Tracy, he around 71 or 72, he ended up getting rushed by some MA member NAB. And Bo was handling his business, though. Old man Bo, a beast. He's straight with it. Fig, too. All these cats, man. And, you got to sit there and... I know everybody talks about this 1968, September 16th, right? But I think the key dates are when Cheyenne got killed. This is what evolved, the NF into a whole different direction. This is where you started to have different individuals that were straight with it. Joker Mendoza, Crackers, fucking Babo. Death Row Joe was a fucking beast back in the days too as well, man. All these cats, Perico, Fig. They were all pushing a hard line at that time. And this is where the mob mentality came about. This is where the vote to put Babo in position as a general came about. This is where, they kept on starting to make a lot of changes and stuff. It was based upon these incidents, you know what I'm saying? And, I always hear like the comments about whether, how many hits the MA has against the NF and how many hits the NF has on the MA. Whether they were associates or members, they were aligned with one particular faction. You could sit there and kind of try to contest, Fat Cat. I don't believe that you can contest Fat Cat when he was killed by the NF, because that was Daniel Loza's bled-in moment. Because at that time, this is when they had a different direction of the O at that time. Flaco from Artesia, you know what I mean? Fig has been known to keep it real on a lot of things that he discusses. I don't think that Fig would be telling me a lie that Flaco told him that he was actually a Mexican Mafia member and was trying to pull him in. Now, could a Flaco from Artesia be lying? Maybe. But I don't think anybody would sit there and put out there a false status or a false membership, because the consequences for that would be death. You guys get what I'm saying? But besides it, man, both these groups were very treacherous, man. The NF stronger point within the organization came around 76, and that's when the CDCR started recognizing them as one of the strongest prison gangs, you know what I'm saying, because of the amount of killings and involvement that they were. And the only thing I can sit there and say that if the CDCR would not have separated them, right, or CDC back then, there would have been more casualties on both sides. And there were still casualties, because you'd have people that were out there in certain lines. Sometimes doors would crack open. But what they used to do was, when they took them off the line, it wasn't like they were in the shoe or validated blocks. They were in different sections that were separated from the rest of the main lines. They were basically almost disciplinary areas. And so you had a lot more people that were out there in those lines that were undercover. And that was in order to do the NS bidding at that time. You know what I'm saying? Now, one of the most interesting parts I find in this story was the fact of Little Danny being related to Alejandro Knuckles Moreno, them being carnales, one allegedly being on the NS side and one being on the MA side. And I heard that was common sometimes because of the reach that, different individuals had. It's like Maravilla had a few NF members back in those days. They also had a few MA members that were very influential, like Topo Peters, you know what I mean? You also had, like I said, you had individuals from like Big Bassett that were NF and MA, San Diego. So that was the kind of a trip that you had two brothers. Now, the NF ended up killing both these dudes. Little Danny was pretty much killed later on because of his cowardice act. When he was requested to participate with Stockton Flappers from Stockton and taking out Mike Buff and his brother, he peed on himself. And that's when everything went hectic, and, this was a different time era, you know what I'm saying? And people need to sit there and, anytime you have these historical spills, you know what I'm saying, you're going to have different people that have a different version, unless they were immediately on that yard. Hey, I'm getting information from people that were actually present on my end. And you could have 10 people that were there, and 9 out of 10 are going to have a different version. But a lot of times there's going to be similar information that aligns together. You know what I'm saying? And, this year was a big year. If the things that didn't happen in 1972 happened, who knows what would have happened? Because, like everybody knows, Cheyenne had a vision. You know what I'm saying? He became very much involved in more radical ideals. You also had a couple other individuals like Rock On Lou and Luis Talamantes, Bala. These guys, individuals were kind of really willing to push, radical agendas, and changing the system and revolting against the system. And they were more than willing to align with individuals, regardless of what group they were. And a lot of that I heard with Rock On Lou and Bala was that they ended up in AC with a lot of the BGF members, because a lot of the BGF members or Black Family, or whatever you want to call them, were being pretty much persecuted by COs and whatnot and being placed in AC. So when they got there, that's when they started to have a little bit of relationship and understanding certain things. I think before that there may have been conflict and issues, but once they got there, it became more conflict against the system. Like I said, there's other individuals like Bala, like he was involved in the San Quentin's 6. And, he also hit fucking Chalo, believe it or not, back in I think 72 as well. Or 71 maybe, right after the stuff that happened with Death Row Joe and Woodsy. From there, like I said, man, it became a whole fuel of propaganda to push your line of what you believed in or what group you aligned with. But before that, it was all pretty much, these yards were pretty much ran independently. And so if you were a NF member and MA member, if you guys were on good terms, then you would just be able to coexist on the yard. But a lot of these issues pretty much stemmed from what occurred in San Quentin, and all the tick for tack murders and attacks and whatnot, man. And, this is, these are true stories, man. There may be certain things that maybe can be added, that others may be able to, speak upon. But there may be also some stuff that nobody knows about, like the situation with Flacco. That's coming straight from Fig. And Fig personally liked this dude. Like I said, they were in Y together. And for him to sit there and tell me, nah, that dude was a MA member, I know 100% for a fact, that kind of means something. You know what I'm saying? And you need to really look at that. What is the agenda behind not acknowledging members? I don't know if maybe his membership was voted on that yard and wasn't filtered out. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? It could also be that based upon the fact that he was killed, they didn't want to acknowledge him. They said that one time. He said that they're supposed to say that they didn't get killed. It's a recruiting tool. No one wants to sit there and admit that they got the best of us. They killed one of our own. How's that going to look? That a group that's supposed to be considered themselves superior and wants to run all the rackets in California is being killed by, one of their members gets killed by a smaller faction. Now, the situation with Cheyenne, no one could deny that. That was pretty much a very well-recognized story, man. And like I said, whether people people are going to have an indifference of opinion, but mostly all said that if these things didn't happen before, Cheyenne would have been alive, okay? And who knows what type of report, because Joker from Redonda Beach, he was there as a spokesperson for the NF at that time. You had some straight killers there. You had Joker, you had Leaky, you had Crackers, you had Manzana. Manzana was involved in a lot of shit too as well. So you had all these individuals basically, and the NF were pretty much strong there in Chino, And Cheyenne, I think there was just Cheyenne on that tier and maybe 2 other MA members. And we already know what happened in the process of him being killed, They got his bodyguards. One of his bodyguards got thrown off the tier. The other bodyguard retreated, you know what I'm saying? And as we know, the correctional officer said, do you want to come out? All that was in response to the Aranda brothers, an individual from Maravilla, who were hit. Him and his brother. One of the brothers was not an NF member. Okay, it's just like the Woodsy situation. When Woodsy's brother got killed, he was not an NF member. Just Woodsy was, Anyways, this is a quick spill, man. September 16th, I just did a spill earlier, highlighting the key areas and the key dates. And I think it's kind of cool that I can go back over these stories and give you guys a little bit more information, because when I did the history part, like I said, when you're doing history,
here's what I found on the internet.
Look at that, my fucking phone's going off. When you're doing history and you're doing it like in different parts, sometimes you got to be a little bit more concise to give the followers a base grasp. When I did the 4-part series recently, now I'm able to go in a little bit more details: who, what, where, when, why. You know what I'm saying? It's just like the situation with Cheyenne. One of the pieces that they used to kill him came from a typewriter that came actually from an HA that worked in the clerk office, believe it or not. Yeah, some crazy shit was going on at that time, man. You know what I'm saying? But in any event, like I said, man, I'm not an advocate or promote any of this violence, and all this stuff has really gotten really deep, man. And it's translated to the streets. It's translated, pretty much nationwide. Who would have thought that these 2 groups who were just young in the system and were trying to basically propagate their beliefs, their group, their fucking organization, their brand, would turn into a nationwide almost syndicate where you have NF and MA in almost every state. These are facts. You know what I'm saying? Things evolve. They change. So what you may see of the MA and NF today is not what you've seen 50 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago. Times have changed. And nowadays you have a lot more different street gangs who do the bidding, who do the work on the streets. You have a lot more associates that are taking care of certain business, communications, drug trafficking, that are organizing things on behalf of the big homie so they can isolate themselves. In the beginning, these individuals put their own work in. You were never going to have an associate go over there and put in work for you. You were going to deal with shit yourself. And I've been watching these videos from Michael Thompson as well, and a lot of stuff he says, some of it's valid, but some of it ain't. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, he was like a couple people put in the comments, and the NF would never waste fucking 7 manpower on one dude. He switched up to a beams and bices. The baseball incident, you know what I'm saying? He kind of overreached on that as well. The NF ended up getting locked down based upon that. You know what I'm saying? And that's when the employment of undercovers became a lot more serious. So when you hear these stories, man, you got to sit there and take it with a grain of salt as far as if they were directly involved or are they hearing it from hearsay. Now, I'm hearing it from other people, these stories, but they were actually involved. I've done research. I read a lot of documents. It's like if you look into the September 16th, 1968 shoe war, it'll say that San Quentin was locked down on September 16th. I always believed the incident to have happened September 16th, but I was proven wrong. You know what I'm saying? Because if you start to look into things, you'll find different perspectives and view of what really, really happened during that time era. Anyways, this is a quick spill, man. I know you guys are going to enjoy it, man. You know what I'm saying? This is in regard to, like I said, a hit that occurred in 1972 around September. An MA member named Tomás Flaco Oropeza de Artesia, who many have claimed that he was just an associate, was actually recognized as a member by some of the NF guys. And like I said, Fig pretty much elaborated and gave a whole different account of who this individual was, how we knew him, and what the goal was. It's kind of crazy that the last general standing within the old NF Constitution, could have at one time became a Mexican Mafia member. But this story is really common when it comes to these groups. You know, like I said, there was brothers on different sides, man. You know, some were NF associates, some were members, MA associates, MA members. It's a lot more common than you think. With that said, this is your boy Flacco from a convict's perspective, man. And one more thing, like I said, we dropped an album the other day. This label I assisted in doing a project, and we got some other artists that have already agreed to work with us. And so we're trying to push a little something. Eventually, I'm not really trying. For now, maybe I'll do 1 or 2 albums and jump on a mixtape. But the main agenda is to give other people a chance, and we're hoping to sign, you know, other artists who want to have a platform to push their stuff out, and hopefully get something going, man. So we could do things more. So a convict's perspective can be affiliated with things outside of just this shit. You know, it's all about growing and evolving. So, hey, if you guys check out the album that was dropped, check it out. If you like it, man, purchase it. Help support us, man. Help us push this line, man. We appreciate you. Much love, much respects. It's your boy Flacco. You know, happy September 16th, man. I hope everybody continues to push that struggle, push that strife within yourself. Do better for yourself. Do better for your community, man. You know, don't get caught up in all the riffraff shit, man. If people are coming out and they want to stay out and they want to change their lives for their family, then do that, man. You know what I'm saying? Because there's too much shit going on in life, man, to really get caught up over some bullshit. Some people are so worried about other people that's all that consumes them. Focus yourself on your family. Focus yourself on your channel. Focus yourself on your job, whatever it may be. You know what I'm saying? Fuck all the riffraff bullshit. You know what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, people are still going to be here. They're still going to be doing what they're going to do. And no one really cares what anyone has to say or think about it. Because the moment you care is the moment you're giving everybody control over your fucking life. So it is what it is. Get it cracking. You already know. Boy Flacco, I'm out.